Neon Genesis Evangelion is one of the most popular and critically acclaimed animes of all time, not only in Japan but in Western countries as well, often ranking high on the list of the most popular anime. Almost 30 years later, it's still being talked about and enjoyed by people, and that has been helped in large part to its successor Rebuild film series and the fact that it's only recently been wrapped up. The original show and its 2 movies can still easily stand on their own 2 feet, and the franchise as a whole still maintains a healthy presence in the anime fandom's conscience. With Evangelion becoming this extremely popular franchise, especially in the West, it has drawn the attention of streaming giants like Netflix and Amazon Prime Video wanting to get their slice of the Evangelion pie, which has led to some problems regarding its localization and especially its English dubbing. All of these problems have led to quite a bizarre dubbing history for not only the series but the films as well. The first licensor to pick up Neon Genesis Evangelion was ADV Vision, also known simply as ADV, which is how I'll be referring to them from now on. ADV was founded in 1992 and was based in Houston, Texas. Because ADV was based in Houston, they would for the most part use Houston-based voice actors and recording studios. In the early days of the company, the dubs they produced were often lower quality due to them being produced on a shoestring budget, with the company having to rent out recording space and use less than ideal equipment. A lot of the time, they'd have to get production team members to fill out smaller roles in the shows that they dubbed since they couldn't get enough professional voice actors. Neon Genesis Evangelion's dub was produced like this, and it's surprising how well it turned out in spite of all that. While the dub is a little rough in the first couple of episodes,
Evangelion Unit 1, move out!
It gets better as the show goes on. The voice actors start to sound a lot less stilted and grating and start to sound a lot more natural and comfortable.
Ava Unit 2, roll out! Take some of that heat off of Ray!
The longer the show goes on. Even though the characters do sound a little bit unnatural in the first couple of episodes, I never found it too off-putting that it made me want to turn off the dub and switch to the sub. The ADV dub has a lot of charm to it, and while it can be a little bit goofy at times, I highly recommend it. It's a great watch. ADV licensed Neon Genesis Evangelion from Gainax in late 1996, which was just a couple of months after the series had finished its original run in Japan. ADV were quick to start dubbing it and releasing it on VHS. They did that all the way up until the middle of 1998. Originally, when ADV picked up Neon Genesis Evangelion in 1996, it wasn't a well-known show, and it wasn't this super popular franchise it is today. It was also the second major TV anime that ADV had dubbed, with the only other one they did before Neon Genesis Evangelion being Blue Seed. ADV would later release Neon Genesis Evangelion on DVD between 2000 and 2002. ADV would then re-release it again on DVD in 2004, but instead of a basic re-release, this DVD release would feature a new Director's Cut version of episodes 21, 22, 23, and 24. Because of the new footage added to the episodes, ADV had to go back and redub all of the Director's Cut episodes. The only problem with redubbing these episodes was some of the original voice actors weren't available to reprise their roles anymore, due to them either leaving the industry between the time of the 2 dubs taking place, or office politics getting in the way. Tristan McAvery, who was the voice of Gendo Ikari, was replaced by John Swayze. Tristan played Gendo really well, with his voice fitting the character of Gendo superbly.
The old man wants to advance his schedule using us as his tools.
John doesn't disappoint either, sounding very similar to Tristan's Gendo, with John's Gendo sounding a little bit deeper.
The old man wants to advance his schedule using us as his tools.
Another voice actor who was replaced was Kyle Sturdivant, who played Kawaru, and he was replaced by Greg Aries, whose take on Kawaru is quite a bit different from Kyle's take on Kawaru. Other voice actors that were replaced were Jason Lee, who was the voice of Shigeru Aoba. He was replaced by Vic Mignogna. Kendra Benham, who was the voice of Maya Ibuki, was replaced by Monica Riel. Outside of those, most of the cast stayed the same. Matt Greenfield, who was the senior ADR director and the English language producer on Neon Genesis Evangelion's dub, stated in an interview on Anime News Network that he was much more pleased with the work I did after we redid it for the Platinum editions. When ADV did the redubs, they also had access to better audio and studio equipment, along with the voice actors who now had previous experience voicing their respective characters, enhancing the sound quality and the performances. Overall, the ADV dubs cemented the tone of the Evangelion dubs for a while, and they helped influence other companies' dubs of the franchise. While the dubs may not be the most serious or accurate at times,
You riding his baloney pony?
they are my personal favorite Evangelion dubs and dub cast. There are some great performances from Spike Spencer as Shinji, Alison Keith as Misato, and Amanda Wynn Lee as Rei. Tiffany Grant kills it as Asuka, perfectly injecting German in between her lines to make her character sound more authentic.
No prior training.
My God!
Neon Genesis Evangelion would later receive 2 films related to the series in 1997. The two films were made in response from the negative reaction and backlash from fans regarding the final episodes of the series which deviated from the intended original ending. Those two films were Neon Genesis Evangelion, Death and Rebirth, and The End of Evangelion. ADV was initially not interested in the two films due to Gainax wanting a large amount of money to license the films, but later ADV would change their stance on the films with them entering negotiations with Gainax for the overseas license. Those negotiations must have fallen through because Manga Entertainment announced that they had purchased the overseas rights to the films in 2001 for around $2 million. Manga Entertainment got to dubbing the two films, and Manga Entertainment pulled an unusual move for them. Instead of recasting all of the voice actors, they decided to keep as many of the original voice actors as possible. They even brought Amanda Wynn Lee, who was the voice of Rei in the original series, to write the script for the two films and be the ADR director as well. While Manga Entertainment was able to get most of the original voice actors for the main characters, they had to replace many of the side characters with different voice actors. The original voice actors do a good job, but some of the recasts are not the best. Now, before getting onto the voice actors and the recasts, I just want to mention that I will mostly be talking about the voice actors in regards to the End of Evangelion dub, rather than the dub of Neon Genesis Evangelion, Death and Rebirth. The result of these recasts are quite mixed, with most of the new recasts fitting their roles. Aaron Crone, who voices Kaji, also takes over as Koaru from Kyle Sturdivant, and I personally prefer Aaron over Kyle. He sounds a lot more fitting and enigmatic.
Singing brings joy and revitalizes the human soul. I think that song is the highest achievement of the Lilin culture.
Singing brings joy and revitalizes the human soul. I think that song is the highest achievement of the Lilim culture.
Not all of the new cast are great though. One that sticks out quite badly is Keith Burgess as Makoto Hyuga. He just sounds way too different and over the top compared to Matt Greenfield, especially regarding his accent, and Keith delivers his lines pretty flat and unenthusiastically.
This is insane. The center was made to withstand angel attacks, not invading armies. Safety off.
Then other times delivers them way over the top.
Damn, haven't you ever heard of moderation?
Because Manga Entertainment decided to reuse as many of the original cast as possible, they had to record their lines in Texas, where they were based. Manga decided to use the editing company, who were based in Houston, to record the original returning cast, and then use PCB Productions in Los Angeles for the new voice actors. Overall, the Manga Entertainment dubs are alright, and I would recommend them, especially since they're quite consistent with the original ADV dub. Despite what some people say about the End of Evangelion dub, I really don't think a couple of sound effects and voice actor changes detract too much from the dub overall, especially not to the point where it's unwatchable or bad. I recommend people go and watch the Manga UK dub of Demon City Shinjuku if they want to hear an unwatchable or bad dub. Just a couple of side notes as well. Manga Entertainment only dubbed the Death Drew 2 edit of Neon Genesis Evangelion Death and Rebirth. The dubs for End of Evangelion and Neon Genesis Evangelion Death and Rebirth were done before the ADV Directors Cut dubs, so that's why people like Tristan McAvery and Jason Lee are still reprising their roles instead of the new Director's Cut voice actors. Evangelion lay dormant for a while after the release of End of Evangelion, and outside of a couple of DVD re-releases and some rumors of an unconfirmed live-action version of Neon Genesis Evangelion, there wasn't anything major for the franchise. That was until 2006, when a new Evangelion film was announced in New Type magazine in Japan, with the new film being known as Evangelion 1.0 You Are Not Alone, and the film was scheduled for a release in the middle of 2007. The film did eventually release in Japan, but it was released a little bit later than expected, as it was released on September the 1st, 2007. Many Western fans eagerly awaited news of the film making its way over, and just a couple of months later, in December 2008, Funimation announced that it had acquired the rights to the film. Funimation spent the next year dubbing the film with their in-house studio, and they decided to bring back two of the original ADV voice actors for the dub, and one from the ADV Directors Cuts. The two original voice actors they brought back were Spike Spencer, who was the voice of Shinji, and Alison Keith, who was the voice of Misato. They brought back John Swayze, who was the voice of Gendo for the Director's Cut episodes. All other characters were recast by Funimation and were replaced with mostly Funimation's talent pool of voice actors. Rei was recast, much to the annoyance of Amanda Wynn Lee. I couldn't find a reason for why Funimation recast her, but they did. And they replaced her with Brina Palencia. In my opinion, they sound very similar to each other, and I think Brina does a good job as Rei. Strangely, Greg Aries, who voices Koaru in the Director's Cut episodes, did not reprise his role as Koaru, but instead voiced Kensuke Eda. I personally prefer Kurt Stroll as Kensuke, but Greg does an alright job. All of the Funimation voice cast does a fine job. Nothing too stand out, but nothing bad. It's enjoyable and a good listen. I like Jerry Jewell as Koaru, with him sounding similar to Aaron Crone's Koaru.
And we are the words, I love you.
If you're waking me, the child has appeared.
and Kent Williams did a great job as Fuyutsuki. The ADV voice actors also sound a lot better and give a more convincing performance compared to their work on earlier episodes of the NGE dub, with all three of them doing great work and sounding a lot more natural in their roles. The Rebuild films were planned to be a 3-part remake of Neon Genesis Evangelion, and while Hideki Anno and others deviated somewhat from the original goal of the trilogy during production, they still had every intention to make the second film in the series, and with the critical and commercial success of Evangelion 1.0, it only spurred them on further. Evangelion 2.0 You Cannot Advance was the sequel to 1.0, and the work on the film had already begun even before 1.0 had finished and released. Even though the film was well underway, the release date for 2.0 would be pushed back many times, resulting in a release date of June 2009. Once again, Western fans waited, and once again, Funimation would deliver. Funimation would license 2.0 in 2010 and got to working on dubbing the film, releasing the film in theaters in January 2011 and a couple months later on Blu-ray and DVD. Funimation once again used their in-house dubbing studio and used the same dub cast from their 1.0 dub for the 2.0 dub. With 2.0's introduction of new and returning characters, Funimation had to make a couple more cast additions. 2.0 introduced Asuka for the first time in the Rebuild trilogy, and Funimation decided to bring back Tiffany Grant for the role of Asuka, with Tiffany delivering a good performance. 2.0 also introduced Mari Illustrious Makinami. Mari is voiced by Trina Nishimura, and she does a wonderful job capturing Mari's nature and the character with her performance, being able to bring out Mari's energetic and outgoing personality.
Just one more layer!
Apart from those two, the Funimation dub stays largely the same, and it's an enjoyable listen and does its job well. Everything was running smoothly for Funimation and their Evangelion dubs, but that was all about to change with Evangelion 3.0. Evangelion 3.0 You Cannot Redo is where the Rebuild films really started to deviate away from the original series, with 3.0 being taken in a completely new direction. Because of this change in direction, 3.0 took a little longer to release compared to the time between 1.0 and 2.0. 3.0 eventually released in Japan on the 17th of November 2012. Then in June of 2013, Funimation announced that they had acquired the rights to Evangelion 3.0, and they went about dubbing it like they did for 1.0 and 2.0. They used the same in-house studio along with the cast from the other Rebuild films. They premiered the dub at New York Comic Con in October 2013, and this is where the problem started for Funimation. Now before I get into the issue with the 3.0 dub and its later redub, I want to mention that there is so much different information floating around on the internet that surrounds this issue. A lot of said information is people's speculation and opinions based on trying to fill in the gaps due to the little official information provided, along with unreliable sources and people remembering something that someone else said or some foggy memory they had. I'm going to try and talk about the issues surrounding the dub in the most objective way possible, given the information that I've been able to find. After Funimation premiered the dub, it was supposedly not particularly well received, and Funimation must have seen this reaction and decided the best option would be to go back and rework the dub. Funimation went on to state that they are working closely with Studio Kara to make the dub closer to the original version. Along with reworking the dub, Studio Kara, who was the Japanese company that made the film, also decided to create their own subtitle track for Funimation's Blu-ray and DVD releases. Very little was heard for almost 2 years until finally, in early 2016, Funimation released it on Blu-ray and DVD with the revised English dub and subtitles. The theatrical dub was not preserved on any of the Blu-ray or DVD releases, and the theatrical dub was considered lost media for the longest time, but recently it has resurfaced completely and isn't particularly hard to find if you want to go looking for it. After this whole dub fiasco, Kara became more involved with their English dubs and subs of their work, and would forever change how Kara handled their works overseas. In late November 2011, news broke that Neon Genesis Evangelion was going out of print, and for 7 years the series was unable to be watched legally in the majority of the English-speaking countries. Outside of acquiring the old DVDs that were going for rather high prices, especially if they were still sealed, this would all change in November 2018, when Netflix dropped a bombshell and announced that they had acquired the worldwide streaming rights to the original series and the 2 movies. Netflix later announced that the series and the 2 movies would be available to watch in June 2019. Soon after, rumours started coming out that there would be a new English voice cast to go along with this Netflix release. These rumours would later be corroborated by some of the original cast, namely Amanda Windley on her Twitter. This would later be confirmed to be true with the release of the series on Netflix. No official reason was ever given for the redub, but many people have speculated that Kara became a lot stricter with their English language versions after the incident with Funimation's dub of 3.0. And now they had the opportunity to have new English dubs and subtitles done for the Netflix release, with the new dubs and subs being closer to the Japanese version than the previous ADV/Manga Entertainment dubs and subtitles. These speculations are backed up by the fact that Kara decided to use their in-house translator, Dan Kanemitsu, to translate a new script, fixing errors and mistakes that had previously been made by ADV and Manga Entertainment, even if some of those fixes don't make grammatical sense in English.
They're children.
According to Kari Kiranen, who was the director on the Netflix dubs and the new voice of Misato, Kara chose all of the new voice actors themselves and decided to recast the entirety of the dub and bring back none of the original voice actors for the Netflix dubs. They did let some of the original voice actors audition for their old roles, even letting Spike Spencer, who was originally the voice of Shinji, audition for Gendo as well. In the end, Kara decided against using any of the original voice actors in their dubs. Netflix used VSI Los Angeles for the Netflix dubs of the original series and the movies. After listening to the Netflix dubs, I personally do not like them and prefer the older ADV/Manga Entertainment dubs. My main complaints against these dubs are most of the main voices. I don't buy Casey Mongolo as Shinji. Casey sounds way too feminine even for Shinji, and while I understand Shinji is a 14-year-old boy, I also understand that he's a boy and not a girl. Stephanie McKeon as Asuka just can't compare to Tiffany Grant's Asuka. Stephanie is lacking the emotional punch that is needed for Asuka and that Tiffany brings to Asuka.
Shut up! Who the hell is okay? How could it get any worse? That little bitch! That little bitch Ray rescued me! Screw you! I'm not okay! Of all the people, that woman had to be the one that saved me! Having someone like her save me!
While I don't like some of the new voices for the main characters, I do like some of the newer voices for the side characters. I think Greg Chun as Kaji is great, and I actually prefer him over all of the other people who voice Kaji.
Come on, of course I do. After all, you're pretty famous in this business of ours.
John Paul Karlik as Fuyutsuki is great as well, fitting well into the sly old second-hand man of Gendo.
A menial chore. Damn Ikari likes to shove all the meaningless drivel in my direction.
Overall, the Netflix dubs feel rather stilted and lifeless compared to the ADV and Manga Entertainment dubs and the first two Funimation dubs, lacking that energy they had. I don't hate the Netflix dubs, and I think they are a fine way to experience the show, especially if you're new to Evangelion and you might find the older dubs slightly off-putting. It's just not my preferred way to watch the original series and movies, along with the fact that it shares no voice actors with any other casts. It's incredibly inconsistent in terms of the dub cast and sounding similar to any of the other dubs, leading to a weird experience going from the original series of movies to the rebuilds. The Netflix dubs and subs, when they came out, received a fair amount of backlash from older fans, with there being much debate over how accurate the translation was with the removal of lines and replacement of others. Some of that criticism was somewhat overblown, but these days they are more commonly accepted. Just as a side note, Netflix never dubbed the on-air versions of episodes 21 to 24, and they also only dubbed the Death True 2 edit like Manga Entertainment. Just like every other Evangelion rebuild film before it, the fourth film in the rebuild series was teased at the end of 3.0 and was planned way back with 3.0, but after the troubled development of 3.0, the fourth film was pushed back further and further. After the release of 3.0, Hideki Anno decided to work on other projects after 3.0, namely Shin Godzilla, which pushed the fourth film's development back further. Development on the project wouldn't start up again until Shin Godzilla had finished and had been released in mid-2016. The fourth film would continue to be developed for another 4 years before it was finally scheduled for release in June 2020. Unfortunately, the film would be pushed back again due to the pandemic and would finally see release in early 2021, with the film being named Evangelion 3.0 plus 1.0 Thrice Upon a Time. Unlike the first three films, Funimation had shared no news if they were going to be picking it up, and after the 3.0 dub incident, many wondered if Kara would want to work with Funimation again. Interestingly, instead of Funimation picking up the rights, Amazon Prime Video came completely out of left field, picking up the international streaming rights to the film, stating it would be released worldwide on August 13th, 2021. They also stated that they had acquired the streaming rights to the first three films as well. Many fans wondered what dub cast would be used to dub the film. Would it be the new Netflix cast, or the older Funimation cast, or even a new cast entirely? Some even wondered if it would get dubbed at all, knowing Prime Video's track record with dubbing their anime that they exclusively picked up. There was some suggestive tweets from some of the original ADV voice actors to suggest that they may be returning, but nothing was concrete. It wasn't until August 13th that people found out. To a lot of people's surprise, Amazon Prime Video had assembled an interesting cast for the dub of 3.0 plus 1.0. Amazon Prime Video had decided to use the Dubbing Brothers USA to record their dubs, and they also decided to bring back most of the ADV cast from the main characters, and they also brought back some of the Manga Entertainment cast for some of the side characters, along with bringing some new additions to the cast as well. They brought back the main four, being Spike Spencer as Shinji, Tiffany Grant as Asuka, Alison Keith as Misato, and Amanda Wynn Lee as Rei. John Swayze came back as Gendo from the director's cuts. Brett Weaver came back as Toji. Jason Lee came back as Shigeru. The only ones that were brought back from the Manga Entertainment dubs were Michael Ross as Fuyutsuki, Kimberly Yates as Hikari, and Amy Seeley as Maya. While Amazon brought back many of the original and older voice cast, they made many new additions, recasting quite a few roles, with the results being quite mixed in my opinion. I think Alejandro Sab and Mary Faber did good jobs in their respective roles. Others like Sean Burgos as Kaji sounds off, with his voice not fitting the character.
Perhaps you could take up working the earth with me and Katsuragi once you retire.
While Deneen Melody as Mari doesn't bring the same energy that Trina Nishimura did. In my opinion, they are worse than their Funimation counterparts, but they're not terrible. Kaoru was also recast, making it the 6th time that someone has voiced Kaoru. Deman Mills does an alright job as Kaoru, nothing too special in my opinion. One weird oddity with the cast is Felicia Angel, who was the voice of Sakura Suzuhara in the Funimation dub of 3.0, was also brought back to do the voice of Sakura in the Amazon dub as well. She is the only Funimation cast member to return in the same role. Along with dubbing 3.0 plus 1.0, Amazon also went back and redubbed all of the previous Rebuild movies with their new cast, making them all consistent with each other. It's great that Amazon brought back Kimberly Yates as Hikari and Brett Weaver as Toji, as their aged voices fit perfectly in the older Hikari and Toji in 3.0 plus 1.0, but when you go and listen to the Amazon redubs of the first 3 Rebuild films, they sound off, especially Brett, who sounds way too old to convincingly pull off a 14-year-old boy.
No way I'm learning how to cook. Real men avoid kitchen.
Overall, the Amazon redubs are fine, and while I personally prefer the Funimation dubs of the first 3 films, the Amazon dubs still do their job. The Funimation dubs sound more natural and have more oomph to them compared to the Amazon dubs, which sound a lot flatter. To give credit to the Amazon dubs, they were recorded under less than ideal standards and conditions, with remote dubbing being used for most of the voice actors due to the pandemic. It's not known how much involvement Kara had with these dubs, but it's surprising that they allowed a lot of the previous voice actors to return instead of using their new Netflix cast that they supposedly handpicked themselves. I find it really strange that they didn't reuse the Netflix cast, but maybe they just saw the negative fan reaction to the Netflix dub and chose to bring most of the original voice actors back. That's just speculation on my part, so don't take that as fact. Now, if you want to watch any part of the Evangelion franchise dubbed, I have 3 ways that I would recommend for you to watch it dubbed. The first one being the most consistent way. If you want to watch the entire franchise with the most consistent dub cast, I recommend watching the ADV dub for the series, skipping the Directors Cut episodes and going with the on-air versions for episode 21, 22, 23, and 24. Then, for End of Evangelion and Death and Rebirth, watching the Manga Entertainment dubs, and finally for the Rebuild movies, watching the Amazon Prime Video dubs for all of them. The second way I recommend watching the franchise dubbed is the most convenient way. If you want to watch the entire franchise dubbed in the most convenient way possible, then I recommend watching the Netflix dub of the original series and the movies, as it's easily available on Netflix. Then for the Rebuild movies, watch them with the Amazon dubs, as they are easily available on Amazon Prime Video. The third way to watch the franchise dubbed is my own personal recommendation. I recommend the ADV dub for the series, then the ADV Directors Cut dubs for episode 21, 22, 23, and 24. Then, for End of Evangelion and Death and Rebirth, I recommend the Manga Entertainment dubs. And finally, I recommend the Funimation dubs for the first 3 Rebuild movies, and then the Amazon dub for 3.0 plus 1.0, since it's the only dub available and the Funimation cast will never dub it. If you want to experience the ADV/Manga Entertainment dubs, you'll either have to sail the high seas or buy one of the recent Blu-ray releases that I'm showing on screen now, only 2 of which are still in print at the time of recording. You could get an old DVD release, but the video quality will be rather low. None of the digital releases of the original series and movies contain the ADV/Manga Entertainment dubs. They only have the Netflix dubs. If you want to watch the Funimation dubs of the rebuilds, you either need to sail the high seas or buy a Blu-ray or DVD release that I'm showing on screen now, most of which are also out of print. As stated earlier, the 3.0 theatrical dub is easy to find if you really want to look for it. Kara strangely did allow UK distributor Anime Limited to release End of Evangelion in cinemas in the UK with the original dub, but Anime Limited messed up and sent the wrong dub to the cinemas, causing the first day of screenings to have the Netflix dub instead of the Manga Entertainment dub. This was later rectified for the other days. The Evangelion franchise has one of the most complicated and convoluted dubbing histories out of any anime franchise. From all of the different casts and the voice actors to all of the different licenses picking up parts of the franchise over time, it has gotten really ridiculous, with things like Kaoru having 6 different voice actors, and it's gotten to the point where Kara have gone as far to retitling the original dubs of the series and movies to the classic versions, showing that the Netflix dubs are their official versions. Kara's stricter control over their works have caused them to have 2 official voice casts for the English versions. One for the original series and movies, and one for the rebuild movies, which has confused many new people trying to get into the franchise. While I am personally happy to see the original voice actors return for the rebuilds, I could see how it would be annoying going from the Netflix cast to the Amazon cast. If they didn't like the original voice actors, why let them come back to do the rebuilds? These are questions we may never get answers to, and I wish I could understand Kara's choices regarding their English dubs of their works. I'd like to thank Ava Monkey for making this excellent spreadsheet containing most of the voice actors and what dubs they were a part of. If it wasn't for him and his very helpful spreadsheet, this video would have taken a lot longer to make. His reporting of Evangelion has been a great resource.